Welcome to the Leo Training Podcast with Joe DeLeo. You'll hear in-depth interviews and tips from world-class athletes, coaches, and industry-leading experts to help you train smarter and improve at what you love to do. Train smarter, get stronger, move better, race faster. Here's your host, Joe DeLeo.
With episode 89 of the Leo Training Podcast. And my guest this week is author of Primal Endurance, Brad Kearns. Brad Kearns is a former professional triathlete who held a 9-year career and was one of the world's top-ranked professionals, amassing 30 wins worldwide on the professional circuit. Some of his career highlights include a remarkable streak of 7 victories in a row, a World Duathlon Series championship, and 2 national triathlon championships, and a number 3 world ranking in 1991. Brad currently works with health and fitness expert Mark Sisson on a comprehensive lifestyle movement called the Primal Blueprint. He is the president of Primal Blueprint Publishing, helped develop the Primal Health Coach certification program, as well as the Primal Blueprint Master Course. Brad and I discuss the importance of building an aerobic pace, slowing down to go faster, and how dietary modification can actually improve your endurance performance, making you more efficient at burning fat. And finally, we also discuss cultivating a pure motivation that leads to peak performance. So, without further ado, let's roll to episode 89 with Brad Kearns. I'm very excited to welcome on Brad Kearns, former national champion and number 3 ranked pro triathlete and co-author of Primal Endurance with Mark Sisson. Brad, welcome to the Leo Training Podcast.
Oh, I'm very excited to be on the Leo Training Podcast. I love what you're doing there, and your comprehensive philosophy, your balanced philosophy about fitness really lines up well with what the Primal Blueprint says. And as you heard from the intro, I was a very narrow and extremely narrowly focused athlete back in my day as a triathlete, and I learned through that process. Of course, it's warranted when you're pursuing, a goal at the elite level, but it also can be difficult to maintain a healthy body and a healthy mind, and there's a lot of ways that extreme fitness pursuits can compromise your health. So I know we have a lot to click on, and I look forward to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, we have some great topics that we've got down here for our discussion. But before we get into that, you got a really, pretty interesting backstory here before you got into triathlon. So I was actually hoping you kind of, share with the audience, that story of transition kind of out of the professional world and into triathlon, because you were working in, I believe it was finance. Is that correct, right?
Yes, sir. I was first a student at UC Santa Barbara, and I was had my heart set on being a Division I college runner, and it didn't go so well. I kept getting injured and sick, pushed too hard through the traditional training methods that they still have in these college programs where it's like survival of the fittest. So I got into triathlon as a recreation, to have an athletic goal when I kept getting injured running, and I had so much fun, and it was a great lifestyle to be out there riding my bike and swimming and going to class when convenient, but mostly just getting into this cool, exciting new sport. And then a great tragedy occurred in my life, and that was that I graduated, because I went from, riding around campus. UCSB is a total bike-friendly campus. The beach is right there. You see, the lecture halls are empty if the surf's up, and it was a great lifestyle running around in shorts and a t-shirt. And then all of a sudden I was putting on a suit and tie and driving an hour, 15 minutes each way in rush hour traffic in downtown LA. And my job was at the world's largest accounting firm in this high-rise downtown. And it was absolutely miserable, and it wasn't aligned with my passions or anything like that. The career, I just kind of fell into it because they said you could get hired right on campus if you took the accounting classes and get this good job. And so after 11 and a half weeks, I announced my retirement to the firm, and they were pretty surprised because I was just getting going, and they'd spent a lot of money to train me. But I told them I was quitting my job to pursue a career as a professional triathlete. So There was not much opportunity there in those days in triathlon. It was a very small sport, but I didn't care because I was out the door and I was on my bike and I was just doing something that I had a pure motivation for competing. And I had just a complete love of every single day, the activities of going out there and challenging my body to become good at these three sports. So I didn't really have any pressure on me. I wasn't thinking about the economic circumstances of whether I was going to make it as a pro or not. And I reference this story a lot because what I had was really kind of a magical center of power where my mindset was perfect. It was really pure. I loved what I was doing. I was not attached to the outcome. I didn't attach my self-esteem to what place I got in the race. And I was able to grow and develop and make good training decisions without that ego and without that type A rushed mindset in place where a lot of times highly motivated, driven athletes, they get in their own way and they start to get they take their eye off the prize and they start to get frustrated and rush the process of fitness and make bad decisions and struggle and suffer as a consequence rather than progress because they're too attached to the outcome and too wrapped up in what they're doing.
Yeah. And it sounds like early on there, you really sort of kind of enjoy just playing and exploring and let that kind of take you into the sport of triathlon. It's just kind of very organically and naturally.
Yeah, and another thing that's interesting back then, this is the mid to late 80s, there was no technology for training. And I'm sitting here as an old school guy looking at the tremendous growth of the biofeedback and the technology that's available. You have your wattage meters, and these are great things. I'm not ripping on them wholeheartedly, but when you can get into this overly obsessive, overly technical, overly regimented approach, you miss out on what this kind of magic mindset and magic disposition that I had because you are measuring and judging everything, and you can't help but be attached to outcomes when you're spreadsheeting everything or you're downloading everything that happened on that day. So when I was in this low-tech approach, what would happen be I'd wake up, I'd kind of feel what I decided, what I wanted to do, whether I wanted to bike or run. It was just on a whim or what felt right or what I wanted to work on. I didn't have a regimented schedule. I did not have a written schedule. And then I went out there, no heart rate monitors, no wattage meters. We didn't even have synthetic toxic food to consume. We had to eat real food on our long workouts. But what happened would be if I was tired, I'd turn around and go home and I'd rest. And I'd just take what my body gave me each day, and I wouldn't force anything further to happen. And if I felt great, I'd push myself beyond what I previously thought was a limit or a boundary. And I think that's an important point to make too. It's like we always perceive 100 miles to be a long bike ride on the triathlon circuit because we're only racing for 40K. And so if you can go out there and do 5 hours, 6 hours, that's a really impressive feat. And by that time, you should be home having lunch and getting your massage and resting. But I train with guys who like to go longer than that. Johnny G was one of them. He was the guy who founded the spinning program, Fitness Celebrity, and he was racing in the race across America in those days. He took me on a 200-mile bike ride one day. Wow. And I didn't think I could make it because everyone says 100 miles is this ultimate long ride. But when I was out there enjoying the scenery and listening to him talk and realizing that this was not a big deal to him, I just got carried away and pushed myself far beyond what I normally would do or would think about doing if I was just focused on what the magazine article recommended to get me in shape for this race or what my peers were doing, because we always compete and compare and see how we're doing against our peers. But I was free and open in all boundaries in all directions. And that allowed me in my first year as a professional, I started out, I was way behind the legendary guys because I hadn't trained. I was working in a stinking office doing accounting, but I progressed steadily over time. And at the end of the year, I upset the number one ranked guys in the world, Scott Molina and Kenny Souza. They had a showdown at the Desert Princess World Championship Duathlon. So all of a sudden I went from a nobody to a guy who was one of the contenders. I realized I had a career opportunity all of a sudden, and I was on my way and smooth sailing right to the top. But what happened was, as soon as I started to get that attention and beat these guys that I considered heroes and legends in my own mind, and then the sponsors are calling and the media is coming and giving me the feedback and all that external recognition, I started to get caught up in that a little bit. And I went away from the things that had served me so well as I progressed quickly through my rookie year. And now I'm starting to measure things. And now I'm writing in my training log all the miles and adding them up to make sure that, I'm legit and I'm doing myself a service to defend my title and all that great stuff. And what happens is, this is over a longer period of time now. I started to get more frequent bouts of overtraining and injuries and pushing myself too hard and flying to a race just because they wanted me to go there and gave me a free airline ticket, and not because it was a perfect race for me at the perfect time and I was peaking and going to deliver a good performance. So I started to become a professional in many ways because now I'm dealing with business opportunities and sponsorships and negotiations, but I lost that youthful exuberance and that pure motivation that had served me so well. So I had to recalibrate by getting my butt kicked by people who had, had the formula going a little better than I, and then slow back down and say, look, I got to get over myself here. I got to do this right. I got to get back to what worked for me and be more intuitive and less regimented and all those great things. So here we are now talking decades later, and I still see the same patterns going out there, especially in the endurance sports or any competitive level sport, whether it's CrossFit or the people that we coach and interact with in the Primal Blueprint scene. There's people that have so much passion and desire to compete and improve themselves and reach goals and set more goals and reach them, but they get caught up in that rat race mentality, and that really causes them by and large to struggle over the long term. You can get short-term results from just pushing yourself and going out there and going till you drop every single day. But I promise you, as we extend out, we're going to have trouble unless we cultivate that pure motivation. So that's my favorite message jumping in here. Whatever else we're going to talk about, your results will happen naturally when your motivation is pure, is what I like to say.
I like that. That's kind of an interesting framework to think about it. Put your pursuits, your goals around. So before we get into that first topic, one thing I would love for you to kind of talk briefly about is you kind of talked about the training and racing in the 1980s there without the advent of technology and stuff. And you said you would wake up and kind of, depending on what you felt like doing that day, whether it was swim, bike, run, but also how you felt. So you really listened to your body, and what are some of the things that you would kind of do? I guess before you would head out for that training session to kind of identify today I'm a little bit tired. I'm going to take it easier, but still get some quality work in, or today's going to be a day where I'm going to kind of hit it hard and get some intensity in.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, because it goes even beyond saying you train by how you feel. Because what happens when we do that is we allow this over competitive mentality and this rat race behavior to take hold. So if you wake up and you feel angry, stressed, ready to blow off some steam, insecure, whatever these things that you feel, those are going to manifest and play out into your training decisions, oftentimes in a negative manner. Because if you're pedaling along the bike path and some clown passes you with an inferior bicycle and wearing cutoffs, your instinct is to catch up to him and pass him and show him who's boss on your local bike path. And that's just a feeling, an emotion, a reaction. And if you govern your behavior that way, you're going to be like the lower members of the animal kingdom. And when we're talking about humans, we have intuition. We have the ability to reason with our instincts and realize that, wow, my first response there is to jump into a high conflict setting rather than reason things out and go, hey, I'm going to let this one go and I'm going to let that guy with the cutoffs pass me because today I should be doing a recovery ride. So it's not only how I felt and whether I had a sore throat or those basic things or my knee was still aching from the previous workout and I knew I shouldn't run, but it was also sort of a reflection on what I should be doing and where I should be with my mindset and my goal process and all those things. And so then you can kind of sit back and go, gee, I feel great today, but I've been going great for 3 weeks straight, or I just got back from a transcontinental jet travel. And a lot of times jet travel will spike your stress hormones so that you're kind of buzzed on adrenaline and you're on an artificial high when that cortisol is flowing through your bloodstream and you feel better than you should, or you have a rest day warranted, but you don't feel like taking a rest day because you just got your butt kicked, especially in the swim. So you're going to go to the pool and you're going to swim harder than ever when really you should be maybe, taking it easy and just in a reflective mode until your body's back in shape to do something extraordinary. So I think on that time, when it comes to taking the proper rest and recovery, we have a good sense for what we should be doing deep down. Even a novice in whatever sport or whatever activity you're doing, even a rookie who's never joined CrossFit before, but goes to their first workout and they're putting you through that third set where the first two felt really good, your form was good, you were getting compliments, and then the third one you're kind of getting wobbly and falling apart, and you know that's enough for you, but you keep going just because of the pressure or the regimentation, the protocol of the class you're in. I'm not ripping on CrossFit, but anybody with a personal trainer one-on-one right by your side saying, hey, can you give it another set? You say, sure, because you want to impress your personal trainer rather than vice versa, where their personal trainer is trying to impress you and say, hey, do you want to stop right now? Because you've done some good work. We don't need to overdo it. That's how it should be. But a lot of times we're just caught up in the environment. So it's reasoning with your instincts, noticing how you feel, and then deciding what to do about it. And that's when you get to the highest level, the highest expression of athletic excellence is that intuitive athlete who can go out there and, by the way, make a lot of decisions on the fly. So if you plan to do a 100-mile ride and you get out to mile 27 and your legs are still kind of feeling flat and you're just not feeling it in your motivation and your mindset, that's a day when you should turn around and go home. So it's also like, we talk about feeling lazy and not feeling motivated, and the commercials come on the TV with Nike telling you to just get out there and put on a raincoat and do it if you want to be tough, and all that stuff. We can all do that. We can all toughen up and do whatever we want. And I liken this when I'm talking about this. I talk about it my gun training program. So if I come over to your house right now and put a gun to your head, we're going to run a marathon. And you're going to set a new PR, no matter what. I don't care what your PR is or what kind of shape you're in. You're going to do it because there's a gun to your head. And then we're going to finish and then take you right to the hospital if you're not really prepared for a marathon right now. So we can perform these incredible athletic feats and dig deep whenever we want, whenever there's a gun to our head. And is it going to serve us in the long term? No. So, there's always there's ability to override symptoms of laziness, fatigue, lack of motivation. But I'm going to counter that when we're talking about a goal-oriented fitness population. We're not talking about a deadbeat person who stumbled on this channel by mistake and needs to get their ass off the couch. We're talking about people who are already motivated and driven. So all you need to do there is relax, let your intuition take over. And if you're feeling a sense of diminished motivation, just honor that and perhaps do a third of the total duration of the planned workout or something that's still going to make you feel like you got outdoors, you breathe some fresh air, but you're not in this regimented pattern where you're doing stuff in the name of some schedule that you might have paid a lot of money for someone to write for you, but it doesn't seem to work right now. You told me before we got on the air that a crazy storm's coming into your town and it's raining and, if that affects your decision to train, it's okay that you don't want to ride your bicycle for 2 hours in the pouring rain. You can figure out something else to do. Right. But if you go over to the gym and it's a good day for you to push yourself and you're feeling excited and motivated and energized, do some other workout that's indoors that feels fine. And all these things are part of the rules rather than this macho mindset that we seem to apply too frequently to training, where we're just trying to force stuff out of our body that's not really naturally meant to be on that day.
Right. Did it take you a little bit of time to kind of become disciplined about, listening to your mind and your body a little bit more rather than like trying to push in, like especially early on there in your career?
I mean, now we're getting deep, man, because you said the word discipline, and 99.7% of the time we use that word, we're talking about that discipline to get up out of bed on those cold, dark winter mornings and get one foot in front of the other and get out there and run. And you know what? I have to say, I'm not impressed with that kind of discipline. That's just it's basic. And if you can't get your butt out the door to go for a run, you got to look at your lifestyle and all kinds of decision-making factors that you're neglecting exercise because you're so busy and so important in whatever you're doing in your life. So forget that kind of discipline for a moment. You nailed on the discipline to, honor your intuition and know that, I was dedicating my entire life to being a triathlete. It was my career. I slept for 12 hours. I slept for 12 hours a day for the 9 years that I competed on the pro circuit. I slept 10 hours a night and a 2-hour nap every afternoon.
Nice.
And if I didn't get that nap, then my swim workout was a little bit off that night. So I was very serious about getting the most out of my body and designing my entire lifestyle around competing as a professional and being the best I could be. But still, it's if it was everything to me. I would be willing to train all day if someone said, if you just train all day, you'll be the best you can be. I'd be like, okay, I'll do it, even if it's hurt and it's painful and it's cold or it's hot. But the discipline had to come in to discipline myself to sit on the couch and watch Fast Times at Ridgemont High and other quality movies instead of train while my competitors were out there training. So I'm sitting on the couch being a lazy ass and feeling guilty and feeling insecure and all those emotions. And I had to discipline myself not to cave in to that flawed mentality and instead know that I'm focused on my own best interests. This is what works for me. It might be less training than my peers, and I have to get over that and that need to try to compete and compare and keep up and just make the decisions that lead to success for me. And so that takes a lot of discipline and growth. And yes, you have to kind of learn things the hard way and get your butt kicked over and over and over. And then, wake up one day and talk to guys like Mark Allen, who was on your show. And, he set me straight. He said, I think your gateway to further improvement, he said this to me halfway through my career, is to slow down and honor this Maffetone style aerobic training where you're not pushing it at that tempo level every single workout. Most of your workouts are going to be at that fat burning heart rate where you're developing the ability to burn fat instead of sugar in these long workouts and preserve glycogen and become fitter as an endurance athlete by slowing down. And that's one of the fundamental messages of Primal Endurance, which is the book and the digital course that I'm involved with now, and it's blending my passions for primal living. I've been doing this with Mark Sisson for many years, the primal paleo lifestyle and the diet, which I'm sure your listeners are familiar with. And then last year we released this book called Primal Endurance. So it's blending kind of that evolutionary health, that ancestral health principles, especially the diet, with the proper endurance training methods that we've been trying to communicate for so long. So monitoring your aerobic heart rate, monitoring your stress levels, balancing stress and rest better than the traditional approach, which is that chronic approach where you're out there trying to keep your weekly miles up or do some predetermined, workout volume that's going to supposedly lead to success rather than a more strategic approach where you're intuitive and you're also including those complementary lifestyle elements.
Yeah, that's great. That was a nice, brilliant segue right there into the first topic we had down there, because we were getting pretty deep into some other stuff. But slowing down to get faster and building that aerobic base, and that was some of the points you just touched on there. It's not just the training aspect, but it's really about tapping in and changing the way your body utilizes its own energy stores and the metabolism that it's running when you're not training, and making it very, very efficient, very very good at burning fat in terms of what it's utilizing. So could you kind of talk a little bit more about that and why it can be so difficult to slow down?
Yeah, what we have in the endurance scene is this flawed approach that's been happening for decades among the amateur, the recreational level. The elite athletes have known how to train for nearly 50 years now, going back to the great Arthur Lydiard in New Zealand and his coaching the Olympic gold medal and world record-setting distance runners with this aerobic over-distance mindset where they, jogged slowly and built up their strength and ran in the sand dunes and became strong runners, and then were able to step on the track and break world records at short distance, middle distance events. So generally speaking, the average enthusiast is going out there and training at a vigorous medium to difficult intensity heart rate almost every single time they're performing their workouts, because they're running in a group setting or they're riding in their bicycle pack. Whatever sport they're doing, they're getting a workout, they're getting that sense of achievement because they feel like they've pushed themselves a little bit when they go and do their daily 6-mile run or their 2-hour bike ride or what have you. But what's happening on the metabolic level is they're burning a greater percentage of glucose than fat, because their heart rate has exceeded what we call this maximum aerobic heart rate. And the maximum aerobic heart rate is the point where you're burning the maximum amount of fat per minute at any intensity level. So if you were to speed up from your maximum aerobic heart rate, your maximum fat burning heart rate, you would certainly burn more calories because you're going faster, right? But you're starting to recruit more glucose burning and less fat burning, because as you speed up, it becomes more difficult to burn fat because you don't have enough oxygen, because you're starting to get a little bit short of breath. And when you're needing to burn quick burning energy that burns quickly and easily, you go to glucose rather than fat. So it's a critical distinction. It's a critical breaking point in determining your exercise intensity to not exceed that maximum aerobic heart rate. And if you exercise at or below that maximum aerobic heart rate, you are burning a greater percentage of fat, and the workout is minimally stressful because you have plenty of oxygen to burn fat. You're not depleting your glucose because your blood sugar is so sensitive, and if you deplete glucose a little bit, you bonk, you feel tired and kind of goofy after, you're famished, you want to go raid the refrigerator and eat more sugar to replace the sugar that you burned during the workout. And once in a while, of course, you push yourself with high intensity workouts that last for long duration, like a tempo run or a time trial or a race, and you're going to be tired and hungry after, and you're going to need to rest. But if you do that in a small way every single day, you're going to lock yourself into an overly stressful training pattern. Because as you get into those glucose burning heart rates, you're burning more glucose, you're depleting your glycogen, you're also stimulating a bit of stress hormone production. So the stress hormones are dumping into your bloodstream, kicking you into that fight or flight response, which is good when you want to call on it and get a peak performance effort. But if you ask a bit of fight or flight response every single day, then you're in this chronic stress lifestyle pattern that we talk about so much, because it happens in the workplace and in traffic and in commuting and in arguing in your personal relationships, and you have a little bit of stress going on all day long. So you're in a chronically stressful pattern, and your workouts are contributing to that because they're at a slightly too difficult heart rate to be refreshing and energizing and nourishing. So the endurance athlete especially wants to come home from workouts feeling refreshed and energized, monitoring that heart rate to ensure that it's at or below maximum aerobic heart rate, and generally feeling that the workouts aren't fatiguing you every single day. You should feel refreshed and energized, and then going about with your busy day with more energy rather than less because of your workout. And we don't seem to grasp that. We have this struggle and suffer mentality in all the fitness pursuits, where we feel like we're paying for a gym membership, we drive into the parking lot, we get our free towel, and we want to go do something that makes us feel tired and exhausted an hour later so we can go back and sit at our desk job. And we have that perception of what fitness is. But the real athletes have known for a long time that you simply can't do that to your body every single day. You have to be good to your body and build to the extent that pretty soon, if you look at an elite athlete, they're performing a pretty impressive workout. They're running at a pretty fast pace, but they're comfortable. It's like jogging or jog walking for the average person. So we're looking at their model of how fast they're running, but it's minimally stressful to the body. So you want to build by doing minimally stressful workouts. And what happens is over time, you allow yourself to go faster and faster at that same comfortable heart rate. And finally, since we've been hanging on a thread with this exciting info, I'll define the maximum aerobic heart rate as a very simple formula. This is promoted by Dr. Phil Maffetone, one of the leading experts for many years, decades in this game of aerobic exercise and balancing fitness and health. And the maximum aerobic heart rate is simply 180 minus your age in beats per minute. So if I'm a 50-year-old guy, close enough, I'm a little older now, but I keep thinking I'm stuck at 50. And it's hard to do 180 minus 52, right? So if 180 minus 50 is 130, my maximum aerobic heart rate for my endurance workouts is 130 heartbeats a minute. And guess what? All you listeners who are doing the calculation now, if you're 28 or whatever you are, and you're going to have a maximum aerobic heart rate of 150, it's a really comfortable pace. It's surprisingly comfortable to hit your max, and boom, you can't go any faster than that, because then you'll kick into accelerated glucose burning, diminished fat burning, stress hormone production, a little bit of lactate acid damage waste products coming into the muscles because you're at a little bit too fast of a pace. And so it's a little frustrating at first to buy into this, because you realize just how slow you have to go to truly develop your aerobic system, which is the key to success in endurance sports. And that's kind of troubling to people that have that driven mindset that I talked about at the outset of the show, to make them pull those reins back every single day to make sure that they're doing things right and building over time to become an aerobic machine without that risk of overtraining that comes from regularly and routinely exceeding maximum aerobic heart rate.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense to me, and that's the way I've been training for well, I can't even tell you how many years now, for a long time. But one question I do have, and you have a lot of experience, so I'll throw this at you, and this is definitely kind of getting down into the weeds pretty deep into this stuff. So two questions. One is, does it matter if you're working with, say, like a junior or a high school type athlete, where when you would use that formula, they say they're 18, they're going to be like 162, they would be kind of a lot higher. Is there some latitude with that heart rate? That's the first question. And then the second one would be, if you've been training aerobically for a long time, even if you're getting older, is that going to stay at a higher kind of maximum aerobic heart rate threshold, because you've built a pretty robust system? So
let's talk about the young athletes first.
Okay.
And I was once a young athlete and going through the high school and college scene, as I mentioned briefly. And I'll say now that even years and decades later, the general approach to training high school endurance athletes is a disaster, and they're continually used and abused and overtrained in the name of the traditional training program that high school coaches adhere to through tradition over time. Even though these poor kids have so much going on in their lives, they have such an increased need for sleep and rest and recovery. They don't have a lot of self-regulation at that age, so they're really counting on the coach to pull those reins back to enhance their development over the long term. And unfortunately, my niece is another victim, nice young kid going out for the cross-country team, and she ran 1 year, and she was exhausted and not having fun, and no one was noticing. They were just putting her through the paces and saying that you can't miss a workout, otherwise, you're going to lose your standing on the team, and all this nonsense. And it's really disgraceful, because the number one goal of developing these high school kids is develop that lifelong passion for being a healthy, active lifestyle, instead of winning the section crown and pushing kids too hard. And so even the most competitive programs and the most competitive kids would be better served just pulling the reins back a little bit and allowing that natural talent to take them to the front of the pack without the abuse of overtraining. So generally speaking, high school kids could run much slower and fare much better in the competitive setting, because they're constantly just putting their hearts out there, trying to please their coach or their parents or keep up with their peers, and all these crazy things are going through their head, and they're just generally running too hard. So if they were to strap heart rates on them, it would be a tremendous benefit to have everyone slow down and actually be in a discipline, using that word again, a disciplined setting where the coach ordered them to go slow for most of the workouts of the week. And then they can, open up the throttle once in a while and be kids and go crazy and run the first interval too hard and learn from the coach that we're doing 6 more. So you better get your tongue back in your mouth, because the workout's not over. But learn how to be a disciplined runner and someone who knows how to improve and progress progress, rather than just throw stuff up on you throw spaghetti on the refrigerator and some of the noodles stick to determine that it's cooked. And that's what they do in the programs, is some of these kids stick with it for whatever reason, and there's a huge attrition rate. And any coach that has an attrition rate on their team needs to sit down and look in the mirror and go, what am I doing wrong? I don't care how many titles and stuff is hanging on the wall. Something terrible is happening within your program if kids are quitting. And I'm talking about the slowest kid, the fastest kid, whatever it is. So that's my talk with the young runners, is just mellow out a little bit. And by the way, in the middle of the season, take a 1 week break to play water balloon fights and do, pizza outings, and not worry about, the regimentation of training, because they're too young to be thrust into that anyway. And when I was in high school, I had a, wonderfully successful and enjoyable journey as a runner. And it's because I had good friends out there, and we goofed around and we fooled around, and we sometimes skipped days if we didn't feel like it. But we also worked really, really hard because no one was pushing us and forcing us to do stuff we didn't want to do. And so we let that competitive intensity come out naturally, and it worked out really well. And then I got to college, and it became more serious, more regimented, more competitive, and all those things destroyed me rather than make me better and advance to the next level. I should have kept my high school strategy in place, where I was throwing water balloons and hiding around the corner and letting the pack skip me, and then taking a shortcut and pretending I'd done the whole thing and all that fun stuff we did in high school. Okay, so then you talked about the older athlete. And so this 180 minus age formula allows for a year attrition in your heart rate every year as you get older. Just a general idea that your maximum heart rate and your maximum output is going to decline a bit over time. So 1 beat a year is not too much to ask. And again, this is not an exact science, but the main message, especially here on the show, to take away as the listener, is that by and large, you're probably working out at too difficult of an intensity. And it probably doesn't feel too difficult, because we're talking about the metabolic difference between burning more fat and less glucose, or a little bit too much glucose. And you can't determine that when you're jogging down the road, or pedaling your bicycle, or rowing your boat down the water, right? You can't tell what fuel partitioning is happening at that point in time. But what you can tell is 30 days in, 90 days in, 3 years in, how are things going? Are you progressing, or are you backsliding here and there with sore throats, illness, injuries, bronchitis that lingers through the winter, and all that nonsense that's part of the endurance athlete scene because of the overtraining aspect?
Right. Yeah. And the one of the great points you made there is the chronic stress, because I think so often we get caught up and we kind of silo it, and we only think about the stress that's coming from the actual training, and not taking into account, school or job or relationships, or any of the other stressors that are happening. Especially, if you're a kid, you're still developing as a human being. Your body's changing. There's a lot of hormones, kind of in play. So those are, all major different types of stress, but they're still affecting the body, and you need to kind of take those into account, because they have a major effect on your performance on a day-to-day basis too.
Oh, sure. I mean, like I related as a triathlete, sleeping half my life for 9 years. That was all about, managing stress as best I could and putting every ounce of energy I had into training. So I didn't have a job, a commute, a highly stressful lifestyle, except for the workouts, the races, and all that transcontinental jet travel, which was extremely stressful. So if you put it all together, during that decade of my life, I promise you, it was from age 20 to age 30 when I was competing on the pro circuit, I aged more than 10 years. And when I retired at the ripe old age of 30, because my body was completely worn out from all the traveling and the racing, 130 races and going across the globe to all the continents. And, it was enough for me. And I literally felt like I was 80 years old. I'd wake up every day with creaky ankles because I wore these lightweight racing shoes, and our feet would be freezing cold coming out of the cold lake, and there's no blood in your feet. And then all of a sudden you're asked to pedal and then pound the pavement. And, you have aches and pains as an athlete anyway, because you're pushing the very limit of your fitness and your ability all the time. And, if I wasn't training, I'd be in a reclined position because I was so tired. And I was always battling the very edge of getting sick, getting injured. My knee was always about to get injured. My left shoulder was always aching a little bit, and just right there in the protective point where if I'd swim even a little bit more, then I'd have that 4-day problem and have to go to physical therapy. So I was just right on the edge, held together by, chewing gum and string, trying to get the very most out of my body. And at a certain point, there's nothing you can do about that. The marathoner Ryan Hall has been getting attention for retiring so soon at the age of 33 after running his butt off for 20 years at the top level. And it's like, no, he's got the most out of his body. He had a fantastic career, and people need to reframe this to not think that he did something wrong and cut his career short, right? And so in my case, like I was trying to go, when I got to the peak of my career, I was trying to improve from 1 hour 46 minutes and 40 seconds to 1 hour 46 and 15 seconds at Olympic distance triathlon. A ridiculous goal in the first place, to think like you're already going this speed. That's a very small incremental improvement, and it requires so much more energy that you have to sleep take a nap every afternoon and do this and do that. And so that's where not many people are interested in that kind of total focus and dedication. So we go back to your question and think, okay, look, I have to parcel out some for family time. I didn't have kids when I was doing this. I couldn't even imagine that, because I was so into the kid track where I coached every sport from the time they were little kids. Now my kids are older teenagers, and I put all my energy into that. So I didn't have any pieces of the pie slice going into soccer practice or basketball practice. And this is a lot of energy because I was the most dominant player on the team. From the age of third grade all the way up to eighth grade, I was the MVP on all my son's soccer and basketball teams. And then they started kicking my butt from eighth grade on. I wasn't even invited out onto the court of the field because they torched me. But, it was fun to dominate those guys, man. That was my athletic goal after I retired from professional racing. Was I just wanted to be like scoring goals at will on these poor kids until they cried, Okay, so then you have a job, a commute, all these important responsibilities, and then you want to be an athlete on top of that. So then we have a whole nother decision-making strategy here where, yes, your busy, stressful workday does factor into your training decision, even though your body's physically rested. That emotional stress and that calling upon the fight or flight response during the workday is going to impact your training decisions and your ability to perform and recover successfully. So yes, you have to have this, the scales of justice, like Miss Liberty with the two plates on either side. And so if you're weighing down one side is stress, almost everything goes on the stress scale. And then on the balance scale, the recovery scale, you have sleep, you have going to the park to watch birds with your binoculars. Anybody do that on the listening channel here? Maybe not. I don't know. You have your yoga class, your meditation, your things that so many driven people discount, and all they do is go, 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 and then drop and sleep, and then get up and do the same thing the next day.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely taking time to step back and recharge. Take care of yourself, take care of the mind and the body there. So Brad, you touched on so much there. Is there kind of any things to summarize you want to talk about, just words of wisdom, kind of reflecting back about as an athlete transitions out of professional sport? You mentioned yourself and then Ryan Hall, but sort of, some of the things you now that, if you could impart upon others as they're making that kind of transition period?
Yeah, I think just to summarize the stuff I already talked about, I thought of this recently that maybe one of the encapsulating recommendations would be to get over yourself. So you can write down those 3 words if you're taking notes. And I don't want to come off haughty because I'm telling this to myself too. And it's something that you can remind yourself over and over when you get too worked up into the importance of what you're doing and attached to the outcome of what you're doing, whether it's an athlete or your position in the law firm or in the bureaucratic corporate setting. It's, if you're healthy and you're waking up and you have blessings to count or something to look forward to and to be positive about. I also, appreciate the, I spent some time with Lance Armstrong, wrote a book about him. He used to be an old-time triathlete, and he has a lot of success attributes that people can model, even though he got disgraced with the direction of his career and the direction of the sport going down. But he taught me that your positive attitude is always a choice. And that's, the most important thing is to choose that positive attitude every day, no matter what happens to you or no matter what your circumstances are. And so I try to keep that one close to the vest, close at hand, where, I do have a choice every day to choose a positive attitude. And I think learning the hard way or learning in the most intense and dramatic way possible as an athlete, the lessons of success and failure and the lessons of life. As an athlete, you're completely exposed. You're out there in a race. I mean, exposed. I'm wearing a Speedo and everyone's watching me, because back then we didn't have these cute bodysuits, it was like right. You're there with your skin and you're on display and people are looking at you. And if you're overweight or out of shape and you're running by a big crowd and people know your name, it's like, this is it, man. This is the real deal. And when you get 11th, you just got 11th, dude. You can't talk your way out of the 11th. And when you got first, you got first and everything's clicking and works for you. But it's very much exposed those dramatic lessons of success and failure. And when you can realize that, or when you can develop that ability to release your attachment to the outcome and just enjoy the process. And when you come 11th, you can take the positive aspects of that, or this is an opportunity for improvement and a growth experience when I got my ass kicked. And you learn so much about yourself in defeat and in struggle, possibly even more so than you learn when you succeed. But you also learn a lot about yourself when you come first place, and you still can write down that message on your notepad to get over yourself because it's not such a big deal. I remember my favorite anecdote for that was I won this big race in Southern California. It was the Orange County Performing Arts, and I was defending champion, so I won again. It was one of the greatest races of my life. I came from behind. It was super exciting. And then the very next day, I jogged over to the swimming pool, my usual, post-race routine, couple miles jog, swim for half an hour, get out, and then head back home. And someone had stolen everything, like all my clothes were gone. So I got out of the pool. I had a Speedo and goggles on, and I had to run down a busy street in Los Angeles for over 2 miles to get home in bare feet, running in a bathing suit with cars driving by, looking at me. And so like yesterday, I was the legend hero of the sport and people were cheering for me. And I gave a great speech to, thousands of people listening at the venue. And then the next day, I had so little respect by the planet that they decided to take my clothes. So I had to jog home in a bathing suit. And I was just laughing on that jog home because you realize like, you know what? If you think you're hot shit sometime, just wait till someone steals your clothes at the swimming pool. It'll put you right back down to humble pie as you're running down the road in a Speedo.
Right. Wow, man. Yeah, that's very very good advice there. Thank you for sharing. Do you have time? Did you want to talk about the running school and speed golf, or do you have to jam?
Oh, speed golf is my current competitive passion. And it's such a nice thing to carry on for your whole life. You got to have something, to go for. I mean, this athlete mentality doesn't go away. I no longer wish to compete on the professional triathlon circuit. Not that I could, but I don't even have any more desire to do what I did before because I think it's important to move on and grow and pursue fresh challenges. So, right now, I love this sport called speed golf, and it's a combination of running on the golf course and also counting your score like a proper golf tournament. So at the speed golf tournaments, they time you how fast you can run through the course, and they add the minutes to your strokes to give you a speed golf score. So my proudest achievement in the sport, earlier this year, I took third place in the California Professional Championships. I'm the oldest guy out there by far because these are all young guys, but I shot a 78 on a championship course in 47 minutes. So if you add 78, 47, my speed golf score was 125, my best score. And that's how the sport works. So it's not just racing breakneck speed around and hitting crappy shots and trying to hockey puck the ball in the hole, because every stroke counts the same as 1 minute of running. And in 1 minute, you can run 300, 330 yards, which is the length of an entire par 4 golf hole. So you have to be a precise player, shooting near par and hitting great shots. But you're kind of in this Zen mode where you're just flowing through the course. You're not taking the time that golfers usually take to line up a putt or take 3 practice swings or pick one of their 14 clubs, because I'm running along with my own club. So I only have 5 clubs. So I'm hitting these crazy in-between shots that require a lot of creativity. And I'm just trying to catch my breath, keep my pace, and hit these smooth putts and make contact. And what happens is when you're in this kind of reactive, mindset, you're in this kind of zone or this flow state, you end up playing pretty good golf. All the players report that they're not in that overly analytical, overly tense state. They're just out there trying to keep pace and run up to the next shot. And if they hit a bad shot, they forget about it right away, because you got to run up and hit the next one without any 10-minute delay while you're watching all your playing partners and you're getting frustrated in your own mind. So it's kind of like the biathlon and the Olympics, where they're cross-country skiing really fast and they're stopping to shoot at a target, and if they miss the target, they got to ski a penalty lap. So it's that same kind of mode where you're putting together these 2 disparate abilities, and that's what kind of turns me on now. So I get to keep fit as an endurance athlete, because you got to run the whole course, which is around 5 miles, but also put that golf element in, which I've enjoyed that sport my whole life, and it's just so different. But now you get a fitness workout as well as being able to play golf.
Awesome, man. That sounds like a lot of fun, and you're staying on your toes there, and really having to think about the strategy element as you go in between for the next shot. Very cool.
Yeah, for sure. So you can find some links if you're interested. Just go to bradkearns.com. I got my speed golf introduction video, and also linking over to, I think of most interest to the listeners will be the Primal Endurance Mastery course. So if you look at primalendurance.fit, it tells you all about this course that I put together, and it's basically bringing the book Primal Endurance to life through a series of instructional videos, taking everything that we covered in the book and putting it into video instructional format. So you have your running technique lessons, and you have your recipes that we make, and the description of how the macronutrients work when you're trying to eat primal paleo. And then I went around the country, the continent, and interviewed many of the greatest endurance athletes of all time, and many of the top coaches and scientists and nutrition experts and physiology experts, to give this comprehensive learning package where you have everything you need to succeed as an endurance athlete, right from the mouth of the best experts in the world, and everything in the book brought to life. So you can sit there and have this treasure trove of like 120 videos to learn and really absorb the message, like we're trying to do on this podcast. It comes to life better than just reading in a book that some old time guy says that you shouldn't exercise at too high of a heart rate. You might discount that or not. You feel the full passion in my voice saying, look, I've been here, I've been down this road. If you slow down, you'll progress better. If you take care of yourself and you make intuitive training decisions, you'll do better. And so that's what we're trying to do, is just get this word out and help people succeed and take care of their bodies and their health while they pursue ambitious athletic goals. Same with what you're doing on your website. When you look at the languaging and the messaging about, getting this big picture approach and being the Leo, right? What do you say?
The lion, man. Be the lion. Yeah. That's right. Because, they work hard, but they like to relax and be a big lazy cat from time to time.
Absolutely. The best role models. My dog too. One of my dogs ran about 15,000 miles, all from my training log for his lifespan of. He lived 14 years. He was with me every run. And if it was too hot, he loved running more than anything. Obviously, a dog running out in the mountains for an hour, it's the highlight of his day. But if it was too hot, he would stop on the driveway. And he knew intuitively that he didn't want to run that day. And it was remarkable because I'd put a leash on him and go, come on, dude, it's not that hot. And he'd be like, nope, I don't feel like it today. And I'd have to send him home. And as soon as I turned around and allowed him to go back into the house, he would jam back to the house like, all right, I don't have to overtrain. And I started thinking about, and I wrote an article in the magazine a long time ago about this because I'm like, you know what? My dog's smarter than me. By all accounts, I'm being completely straight. This dog knows better than me to make the proper training decisions for his development and to avoid overtraining and overheating. And so I'm going to pay more attention to him. And when it's time for him, when he wants to go jump in the stream on the way home and relax in there for a few minutes, I'm going to stay with him in the stream rather than go, come on, we got to keep our pace. It was fun to be right there with him.
That's cool. Yeah, that's a great lesson to pull out from Mother Nature there in the animal kingdom. Very cool. Well, Brad, that takes us through kind of all the topics. I don't know if there's anything I missed or forgot. But it's been a blast having you on.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Do you ready to roll? Do you have a couple of minutes just for a quick rapid fire?
Sure. Let's do it.
All right. Awesome. So I ask all the guests these questions. These are just fun questions so the audience gets to know you a little bit better. So, Brad, given all your experience and knowledge, if you go back in time, what advice would you give yourself 15 years ago?
Get over yourself, right?
Right on.
Yeah.
What's your favorite strength training?
Oh, you know what? I'll only give another one for that one because
Sure.
15 years ago, my kids were little, and then I got to see them all the way through to now they're adults. And I think parents don't realize how little influence they really have. So I think just, open doors for your kids, do the best you can to support them. But don't think that, they're their own people. Even though they're little people,
Right.
They're going to find their own way through life. And all you can do is walk your talk and open doors for them and support them and carry their bag like a caddy on the golf course, but not try to force things to happen and, make your kids something that they're not destined to be.
I'm gonna keep that one in the back of my mind. That's good advice right there. What's your favorite strength training exercise?
Oh, I like the decline Spider-Man push-ups.
Oh, nice.
So I elevate my feet on a chair or bench or something. And then as I'm lowering into the push-up position, I also bring my knee to my elbow. And so when I go, especially when I visit my parents and go to this park in Los Angeles, Serenia Park, there's a picnic table stationed like probably every 100 meters or a bench or a picnic table all the way through this half-mile trail on the park. And so every time I go there, I have to do 100 of my decline Spider-Man push-ups total. And I'll try to get the sets like 40, 30, 20, 20, whatever I can do on that particular day to get to 100. And it's so automatic that it's like set in stone that I show up at this park and it might as well be called 100 push-ups park. So I don't even have to think about it. I just know I'm going to do it no matter how I feel.
Cool.
But that's a good one that really challenges, it's the hardest push-up I can think of. And so I don't have to do as many as just a regular one.
Yeah.
It really gets the core too.
Nice. How has your training changed today compared to 15 years ago?
15 years ago, now I'm 52. So when I was 37, I was just getting into the youth coaching, and I was starting to realize that I was kind of always a narrowly focused endurance athlete through my competitive years. And then here I am as an aging, suburban dad, and I was actually a piece of crap. I was worthless in terms of my total fitness score, so I was still good at jogging for an hour or getting on my mountain bike and riding for 3 hours in the mountains. So I thought I was still fit, but my back would be sore after soccer practice with little 5-year-olds, or if I was doing sandbags because we had a flood and we had to protect the driveway, I'd wake up the next day stiff and sore all over my body. So that was about the age that I started to turn my attention toward really becoming a competent and broadly based fitness athlete where I could strength train, sprint, and do all those things. So I started sprinting really around, maybe it's more around 11 years ago now, but I feel like I'm certainly not capable of doing anything noteworthy in an endurance competition, but I think I'm in better shape overall now than I've been my whole life, even at the age of 52, because I can sprint, I can do strength training, I can lift heavy weights and go down and do heavy squats once in a while, all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah, very well balanced. Excellent. Have you ever had an injury, and if so, how did that affect your training and your life?
Yeah, my ego was severely injured getting my ass kicked. So that's the worst injury I've had as an athlete. Just those ego bruises, man, and they take a long time to recover from. I mean, why talk about a knee injury when you're talking about the most serious severe injuries that I've had? Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, what is one thing that junior or high school athletes should be doing more of to complement their training and their health?
Sleeping.
Nice. Okay.
Parents, if you're listening, let your kids sleep in on the weekends, man.
Nice.
My son, my son grew to 6'2", and it's because I let him sleep until 2:00 on the weekends. These kids need sleep, and their widespread sleep deficiency is going to affect everything from their brain development to their ultimate height and stature, because they're not getting enough sleep. So let kids sleep. Their melatonin release is delayed 3 hours. This is scientific fact that in the teenage years, the adolescent years, their melatonin doesn't kick in until 3 hours after an adult. So when they're told to go to sleep at 10 p.m., they're not really getting that sleepiness that we adults feel until 1 a.m. And then they're asked to wake up early morning for practice or school. And it's a tough route for a teenager right now.
Wow. Very, very good little gold nugget right there. Best tip to improve recovery post-training session?
More sleep.
Nice.
Napping.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, napping is a lot of hormonal changes occur, and refreshing of those sodium potassium pumps in your brain as well as in your muscles happens at an accelerated rate. So even a 30-minute nap after a good challenging workout can make a big difference to recovery. Yeah.
Excellent. What's your favorite meal?
I'm going to say fasting now.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got into this ketogenic realm lately. Mark Sisson and I wrote a new book called The Keto Reset Diet, coming out October 17, and developing the ability to go long periods of time without eating greatly enhances my appreciation of all the meals that I do eat. So it's kind of recalibrating the idea of meals just being, another stop at the gas station to keep you going through the day, to now there are times to really enjoy and order what I want and try new foods and all those kind of things. So that's my wise ass answer.
Excellent. Last two. What's one book everyone should read?
Primal Endurance.
Right on.
Yeah. And if you're not an endurance athlete, then the Keto Reset Diet coming up in October. Look at ketoreset.com.
Cool. Who have you studied, or do you continue to study in your career to improve and get better?
Oh, that's a good question. I've worked closely with Mark Sisson now for 9 years, and then known him. He was my coach back in the old days. This is now coming up on 30 years ago, when we were both in the endurance athlete scene. I was the athlete, he was the coach, because he's older than me. So learning from him and the way that he has operated his business, real entrepreneur, and building that Primal Blueprint brand, that's one answer I'll come up with right away. And then the other one is to be careful outsourcing things like this to mentors and gurus, because I think we're in the age now of celebrity and social media and people building their brand and their platform and telling you how to live your life. And I'm highly averse to that kind of stuff. Maybe it's because I'm old cranky guy, instead of in whatever age group is most receptive or susceptible to that stuff. But go with your own heart and your own instincts and your own intuition about what's right and wrong for you. And, be careful of the measuring and judging forces in the world that are telling you that you're not good enough because you're not making enough money, when you're dedicated to something else that might not equate with high income, and all those kind of things that I think we get negative messages in our culture, when we really just be better off honoring ourselves.
Well said. Well said. Brad, that takes us through the rapid fire. You're off the hook, man. So thanks so much for sitting down with me and chatting. This has been a blast. We covered a ton of ground, a lot of different topics, and hopefully some very good messaging for the audience to take home and impart into their own lifestyle and their training right there.
Thank you so much, Joe. Keep up the good work with the show, and thank you, listeners. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Leo Training Podcast. Subscribe and get even more expert training tips at www.leotraining.io.